Hey, okay, here we are, folks. We are here to do a really different kind of a masterclass today. I was focusing on composition there for a while, 4 episodes in a row, in fact. But today, because it is Lightbox 2020, very amazing and cool convention, conference for illustrators, artists all around the world, I thought I would focus on digital inking techniques, special effects, and tricks and tips and all of that good stuff, and just throw it all in the mix. And let's do a class on that because, hey, everybody could use a little help in that area. Some of this stuff you might know, some you might not. Even if you get one little nugget out of this, I hope then that it would be worth it for you to have spent this hour with me. Okay, I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're all safe and sound out there. I know it's a crazy time. It's amazing that Lightbox has gone virtual. They've done it online. They did a great job. And I hope everybody's enjoying this really special conference. We at Adobe also have a booth there, so go and check it out. There are brushes there for free. There are 10 brushes that I made that you can grab. They're also in the goodie bag. And there's some links to some other cool stuff there, so please do check that out. Remember, we also are representing Fresco, Adobe Fresco. I'll try and show you a little Fresco if we have time today with some of the vector brushes and some inking tricks I have for that as well. That is a free application, works for iOS, so for your iPads, as well as numerous Windows devices. Go check it out. Okay, time to get to the inking. We got some friends here already in the chat. Remember, you can ask me questions. I'm looking at the chat on behance.net. If you're on YouTube, I will periodically check in there, but honestly, the easiest thing for me to do is see what's going on Behance. Okie dokie. So behance.net/live. That's where I'll be looking. All right, we're gonna get right to it now. Time to do some drawing. Here we go. All right, got Photoshop open here. And the first thing I wanted to do to kick things off for you was I wanted to start with the basic round brush, which everybody, it's like, this is what I start drawing with, Kyle. That's the thing that I am most used to, and it just doesn't perform the way that I want it to. I want to show you a quick tip about using this brush and about how to make it perform a little better, especially when you're drawing lines that are tapering, okay? That's where I find that people are having some issues, some problems. So let's address that right out of the gate, all right? I am going to make myself a special brush. I want you to see something here. I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to make an ellipse. Now notice that this ellipse is taller than it is wide. All right? Fill that with color. Simple as that. I'm going to say Edit, Define Brush Preset. We're going to call that Tall Round. And there it is. Now when I open up my Brushes panel, here it is, showing up at the very bottom. Okay? And now I'm going to mess around with it in the brush settings. And let me show you this trick that'll help you with your tapering, okay? I'm gonna turn on shape dynamics. Now we all know that you can control the size of the brush with pen pressure, okay? I'm also gonna knock that spacing on down to 1%, so it's nice and tight, okay? And let's see what that does right now. Whoops, hang on a minute. Make sure I select that brush, got it. Okie dokie, shape dynamics are turned on, pen pressure, there we go, and kick that spacing down. Okay, folks, something crazy is happening here. You know what I did? Boy, I tell you, we're off to a crazy start. Ha ha ha, look what I did. I had a background color turned on for my canvas because I hate looking at a bright white screen, so I was using a slightly gray color, and it captured everything. You can't make a brush with any grayscale values in there. It's not going to work. So quickly, let's do that one more time. Here we go. Fill that with black. Edit, Define Brush Preset. We're going to call this one Tall Round or Tall R. Doesn't matter. Go to my brushes, grab that puppy, and here we go. Shape Dynamics. We're kicking it on pen pressure all the way down to 0. All right. And I'm going to turn my spacing down. Okay. Now, turn that background back on. Draw with it. This is kind of the expected result. But look at this mess. What is that? Looks like the tip of a Wacom pen, or Wacom, right? We don't want that. No. So here's what you do. You go to Shape Dynamics once more. And this is the key, folks, right here. Roundness jitter, you're going to set that on pen pressure. Did you see what happened to my brushstroke preview right here? One more time. Turn that off. Here's what you got before. Kick it on pen pressure. I've got it set to 25%, okay, of the total dimensions of that brush. And now, oh my goodness, look how much sharper those tapers are, right? That's getting there. That is starting to get there. What is the other secret to making it work more? Well, there's a couple things you can do, and I'll show you what to do now. Texture. add a simple basic texture. Could be anything, okay? I've got a whole bunch here. And this is just a grayscale called grainy, okay? But even just a gray value, a solid gray for a texture, okay, will work. I turn that on, and I'm gonna say I want it to be texture each tip, and I'm gonna tie it to height. And as I start to move that down, see what happens there? Okay, it starts to get a lot of texture in there. I'll just kick it up a little bit. And by having that texture file in there, it's gonna give me just a little bit more control on that taper on the back end there. All right, now the higher I kick that brightness, the more that's gonna be intensified. If I turn off texture each chip, I've got a problem because now it's trying to read that texture through the entire stroke, so I'm not gonna get a solid black line. We don't want that, okay? Put pen pressure on there, kick that up. Here we go, and just make some adjustments there. Okay, now with pen pressure, what happens is I start to taper out towards the end, but then I'm gonna pick up that texture. I don't want that much brightness, so I kick that up or down. I take my contrast down, kick the depth up just a notch, like so. Ah, now I'm starting to get somewhere. See this? This is starting to do what I want it to do. These are the adjustments you make to a simple round brush. Okay, now of course it's not perfect. I have to fiddle with it some more until I get exactly what it is that I'm looking for. All right, but now that's a huge step away from where we were just a moment ago. All right, so if you're into drawing with that simple round brush and you want to make a couple of adjustments, give this a try. Now, another thing you can do to kick this up another notch, turn on direction for your angle control. See where it says angle jitter? This is confusing for people because it's not that you're setting the jitter at the moment, you're just setting the control over the angle of your brush. So it should say really angle, and then underneath that we should have a control for jitter, okay? But anyway, that's what's happening. I'm controlling the angle with the direction that I'm moving the stylus. Now the moment I do that, I'm gonna get even better control over the taper, okay? Now this is a 175 pixel brush, so you might be wondering why it's still not acting exactly the way it should. Well look, I'm gonna kick it down to about 40 pixels, and now that is one heck of a good inking brush, okay? This is more the size that I would actually be doing my inking, all right? So that was a simple round brush, elliptical, tall. So what's the key to this working? If you look at where it says roundness here, pen pressure, okay? It's taking that original size, that original stamp that we have, which is tall, right? And with pressure reduced, right? It is actually squishing it more into a circle. It's flattening it out. All right, it's a pretty interesting little effect. And so that is how you're able to get that really fine taper. So look, I'll really try and control my hand here. And you want you to see this is the fine line I'm getting, okay? And then thin to thick and to thin again. Pretty darn nice. All right, so those are the keys. Watch this back again. This will be recorded. You can come back to this anytime you want. Wanted to spend the first few minutes on just pointing out these little tricks for taking a simple round brush, making it easier, more responsive, easier to draw with, right? If you're doing any kind of thick to thin kind of line work and you want to have that nice control with that crisp taper. Look at that. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Okie dokie smoky, it's time to move on. All right. Next on the list is I wanted to talk about different inking styles and the brushes you can use to get your art to look the way you want, okay? And for this demonstration, I'm going to be popping open our Mega Pack to start with. The Mega Pack are the brushes that you can download with your Creative Cloud subscription. They are free for everybody who's got any kind of Photoshop plan, even the $9.99 a month plan that you've got for Photoshop and Portfolio. It's called the photography plan. It's $10 a month. And you can get over 1,800 brushes with that plan by simply going over to this little menu here, and you go to Get More Brushes. Okay, so this is my brushes panel, top right corner, Get More Brushes, and that'll just pop open this amazing menu for you. The Mega Pack is massive. It's got a whole ton of brushes in it, including this little category here, the ink box. All right, so I wanted to start with brushes that are clean and smooth, like what we were just working with there. And there are different kinds of brushes for that. Some of you might like drawing with sort of a technical pen kind of a look. Well, we've got you covered there. If you just scroll on down, you will find Look how many, these are all inks, guys. It's insane. You're gonna find Tech Pen Tilt. Here it is. And there you go. That is a Tech Pen for the ages right there. Really nice line control. And you'll get a little bit of buildup of the ink if you just leave it there for a moment and then draw again and leave it and leave it. But if you want that really fine line, this is the one for you. Now, some of you might be wondering, all right, if I don't have a tablet where I can draw directly on the screen, how do I maintain control over the line I'm drawing and not do that thing where I go line, Command Z, line, Command Z, line, Command Z until I get what I want, right? Nobody wants that. Well, here's what you do. You come up here to the top of the screen when you got your brush selected, and you'll notice this little option we have here called smoothing. So just knock that up to about 25 or 30%, and suddenly you're gonna have these beautiful, perfect curves, and this is gonna make such a world of difference for you. If you're using a tablet where you gotta draw on your lap, put on the table, draw there, look elsewhere, you're drawing one place, you're looking somewhere else. Smoothing is the way you can solve that problem. It also kicks into different modes for you. So we've got this regular mode here, and then you've got settings that'll allow for a pulled string mode. I'll show you what that looks like. See this? It really slows things down and lets you see where you're moving. And once you're inside the circle, you're not gonna pull that line anywhere. So you can stop and say, okay, I wanna go up and back to the right here, and then start pulling that way. Right? This is great for like architectural drawing or product design or things like that, where you just have to be really precise with the line. All right? You can see I get this nice big radius here, and I can pull that way, stop for a moment, okay? So I hope it makes sense how that's working. That's a really, really good precision mode for working with smoothing, okay? I'm turning that off for now because I don't use it that way when I'm just drawing regularly. But it really helps me to draw smooth, crisp lines. All right, I'm gonna pause for a moment, look at the chat, see if you have any questions. Smoothing is the MVP, says Madeline Hinton. I agree with you, Madeline. Hey, hope you're enjoying that book. Hope you're checking out that cool James Gurney book. Man, the man, the man, James Gurney. What's up, Tim? We got Joe Tirmia, nice to see you. Rob Zilla, woo, boom, he says. Rob, you're the man. Eva, Hannah, good to see you all. All right, let's see. Decent drawing tablets out there that aren't too expensive. Absolutely, absolutely. There are. In fact, the Wacom One, I just tested it out myself. Phenomenal device. Wacom One tablet. Go check out that. It is amazing. It's a draw on screen device. Very affordable, very well made. Good stuff. Let's see here. This is fantastic. Oh, good. I'm glad this is going to clear up some of your confusion with brushes. So glad to hear that. Will you do a magic trick for us? Stephanie says. Oh my gosh, I don't have anything with me to do magic tricks right now, you know? I'm so sorry. I guess the best I can do is just put my stylus in my ear, you know? Alrighty, let's move on. UNCG, all right, Antoine, nice to see you. Thank you. Yes, the G. That's where I went to school. Love that place. Okay, folks, let's carry on. So now, that is Technical Pen, okay? And you can make your own Technical Pen using what I showed you before with that round brush, only you're gonna change the brush settings so that with your shape dynamics under size jitter, you're gonna want to make it so that you make the minimum diameter maybe about like 40 or so, because a Technical Pen, you're not gonna get the same range of thin to thick lines that you would with, say, a brush pen or something like that. So by keeping it more consistent, it can get slightly larger with pressure, right? But by and large, it's going to stay about the same size. That'll help you out in that area. All right, now I want to go on up to a brush here called Clean as a Whistle. All right, this is the brush that I use if I have to do really, really nice, clean, thick to thin line art. All right, and you'll see how it looks here. There we go. And this brush has a range from really fat to really fine, okay? And what's making that all work is a lot of what we showed you before we have pen tilt for the size jitter there, so that's a little different. Now, most styluses that you can get today, all right, are going to respond to pen tilt. When I say that, what I'm talking about is, I'm just gonna hold my stylus up for you here. I'm gonna switch out the view here for a moment and see if you can see this. If I'm drawing with my pen held vertically, okay, then the line that I'm going to get will have one quality to it, whether it's thicker or thinner, okay, or more texture or less texture, pardon me. As I tilt it away from vertical and it starts to become parallel with the drawing surface, that everything within that range, okay, of angles there is going to have an impact on the line that I'm making with that brush. So in the same way that you can control things with pressure, you can also control things with tilt. An example of this, all right, is I'm going to come on over here to a Sumi brush. Actually, you know what? Let's take a look at the Sumi brush in the latest free brush set that we have called the Keith Haring inspired brushes. They've got 3 great Sumi brushes in there. Just search Keith Haring at Adobe, Google that. You'll find a link that'll take you to the library with all these brushes. There are 37 of them. They're free. Go grab them. All right, check this out. This Sumi brush, okay, if I were to hold my stylus vertically, as I was just talking about here, and draw, this is the line quality I get. Now, as I tilt it, look what happens. See how I get that dry brush effect? Now that is cool. I'll zoom out a bit here so you can see this. So I can do this, all the same tool. Now it's more solid. Now I'm breaking it apart. Now somewhere in the middle, okay? Everything I'm doing there is one line being drawn while I tilt the stylus in different directions as I'm drawing. And that's what gives me that variation. So tilt is a really amazing thing you can use to your advantage to make it so that every line you draw is different from the next. Because you can also use tilt to control the angle of the brush. So if you look, as I'm holding my brush now, I'm just rotating my wrist around, and you'll notice that the brush stamp is rotating along with my wrist, right? That means if I draw a line here and rotate slightly and draw another one and rotate slightly and draw another one, none of these lines are going to be the same as the others because I'm getting all that variation with the angle and with the tilt. So that's pretty slick. All right, now back to those clean, sharp brushes because I want to show you my absolute personal favorite, and that is the Belgian Comics inker. Now, I grew up reading Asterix, and if anybody knows what that is, then awesome. If not, check it out. The Belgian Comics inker was inspired by the work of Uderzo, the artist from Asterix, and what it is a triangular shaped brush, okay, that allows me to make these kinds of marks. And if you've ever looked at any of those Belgian comics from the 50s, 60s, and French comics as well, you'll notice this amazing combination they have of thick to thin lines, weight underneath, right? Stuff like this. And these qualities here, I was so in love with them as a kid, even more so now when I know that that amount of skill that the artist had to create this stuff, right? And so I wanted to be able to replicate that. So if you're interested in that look, that Franco-Belgian kind of comics line art, check out the Belgian Comics inker. I decided to include it as one of the default brushes in Fresco as well. And like I said, Fresco is free. If you got an iPad and a pencil, go ahead and grab it and you can try the brush there as well. But you can get these nice sort of triangular little doodads here like this. So it could also be good for doing like foliage, right? You're just doing some leaves like this. And that's a good way to add some texture as well. Lots of good control. And I highly recommend you check that out. All right, so I want to move on to the more rough brushes, right? Sometimes we're not looking for something so clean and so tidy. And so for that, we have a whole bunch of options, but I want to start with the comics. Let's see if I can find it, the rough brush. Here we go, rough brush, 2K17. All right, now, here what you're able to do is you're able to do more sort of brush pen drawing, okay? So you'll see that I get, with tilt, I'm able to get a little bit more dry brush, like this, hold it more upright, and I'm gonna get a sharper, cleaner line like this. This also responds to the angle, right, that I'm rotating my wrist to change the line. And so for this, you're gonna get great effects for if you wanna do like filling in some tone for hair or something like that, right? Anybody who's used like a Pentel pocket brush and likes the way that feels, I think you'd enjoy this brush quite a bit, okay? And so what's the key to making these work? If you want to make your own brushes that have texture to them, let me just suggest that you go again to the texture section, okay? And for this one, I'm using a paper that I scanned, but again, any texture that you want to make, as long as you set the value, the mode, pardon me, to height, you're going to be able to do some control with various ways that you use the pen, which means you could use pressure or you could use tilt. So here, for example, tilt is controlling how much of that texture comes through in the line, right? Which means if I'm holding it upright again, I'm getting a nice solid line. And as I tilt it, I'm gonna get more and more of a dry brush, all the way down to practically nothing, you know? Now, if I were to change that to pressure, just see what happens here. You'll notice that now with light pressure, right, I'm getting a little bit of texture coming through. And with heavier pressure, it goes away. All right, but texture is the key to these rough brushes. And that's what's gonna make it work for you. But there's a lot more you can do. And I just wanna show you something very basic. We're gonna go back to that brush we were using a moment ago. Remember that brush we started messing with, that tall brush? And we made a couple of changes to it to make it perform a little better, make it a little easier and more fun to draw with, right? So I'm coming back to our original settings. I've got my pen pressure set for my size, and then I've got pen pressure also set for roundness jitter. Now check this out. I'm gonna go to scattering, and I'm gonna turn up scattering by a value of just 5%. And look at my brushstroke preview. Right away, I've got a bumpier line, okay? Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a count. What that means is the stamp is gonna be applied twice instead of once for every instance of that brush stamp as you're making a path with it. And now I can increase the scattering slightly, and then I'm going to increase my spacing a little bit. So we got 12% spacing. And check this out, angle jitter. Now I'm telling it that the angle of the stamp should randomly change by 10% as well. Okay, now size that down, and as I start to draw with it, zoom in there so you can see this, look at the edges of the brush that I now have. I'm still getting that control with that nice tapering and everything, that's nice, but do you see that the edges are slightly bumpy? So check this out, I'm gonna now take the size jitter and bump that up by a value of 10%. That means, hey, change the size randomly, increase the spacing just a tad more, and I can see a brushstroke preview showing me what it was probably gonna look like, right? So now I've got 25% spacing, and all of a sudden, I've got a great brush that I can use for line art, right? But it doesn't have that perfectly crisp edge to it. It's got a little bump, a little variation, like so, okay? Now here's something else you can do. If you're going to be doing some black fills in your art, right? You want to be able to fill different areas. Well, one of the problems you probably notice if you're using Photoshop to do that is if I make a shape and then I want to fill it, right? So come over here to my paint bucket tool. Do you see this little white line that I get? That is not good, is it? We don't want to do that. So how do you avoid that? Well, check this out. What a lot of comics artists do is they will work at 1200 DPI or PPI, right? So if I were to make a new document at that size, let's come over here, we'll go 1200, okay, and we're just gonna go, we'll just do 5 by 5 inches right now, keep it small. But I'm at 1200 DPI, okay, I've got that same brush now. I want you to see something cool. I'm going to come over here to my brush mode and change it to dissolve. What this does is it makes it so that there's no anti-aliasing in the brush. That means that when you draw a path, the pixels that you're going to be putting down are going to either be black, 100% black, or nothing. No grayscale pixels thrown in there to try and create a smooth looking edge. Okay, so drawing with the same brush now, whoops, there we go. Drawing with the same brush now, alrighty? And now I want to fill it. Well, check this out. I come in there and look at what happened. Sorry, one second, I've got to grab my, there we go. Turn off anti-alias. Okay, well that brush is just too rough. Here, 1 second, folks. Let's reduce the spacing a little bit. I'm going a little nuts here. Okay, that should work. Make myself a shape, okay? And fill it. Now, I got a couple little pixels hanging on there, but that's because, again, this brush is really rough. But I want you to look at the edge of this brush. I'm gonna zoom in here to about 1,600%. Do you see any gray pixels? No. The brush that you're using is just pure black, right? But because I'm drawing at such a high resolution, right? I can come in here, I can draw a shape, I can fill it, I can keep on going, okay? And now, if I were to take this art, I'm gonna make it down back to 300. There we go, PPI or 300 DPI. Now I'm going to zoom in 100%. Look, you get back all that nice smooth line quality without that roughness, okay? But you're able to do all that filling. So try this next time, and we have a category of brushes in the Mega Pack that'll actually make this easier for you right here. They're called Pro Inkers. So if you go to the ink box, and then you come up here, we got Pro Comics Inker Rough 2, Pro Comics Inker 2B, right? So draw a little shape with that. Grab my paint bucket, fill that in. Perfect fill every time, okay? Easy peasy, right? Fill that, boom, boom. So there you go. That's the secret. And the brush mode for those is dissolve. It's essentially turning it into the pencil tool, which you'll find right here, right? Where there's no anti-aliasing whatsoever. Okay, now, back to the rough stuff, because I want to show you something here. Here we go. This is what I'm looking for, the brayer brushes. So sometimes you have an area in your drawing where you need to quickly fill in some texture. Well, you can actually take advantage of the texture file that you have by making it so that the brush shape itself is nothing too special, but the texture is going to show through and do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. For example, here is a brayer brush that I have where the texture that's coming through, because I'm using light pressure, is creating a lot of these interesting areas that I love, right? And to make it even more effective when I'm inking with this, let's say I want to fill in some gritty area of the drawing, maybe it's a city, and I'm just doing like the street for that city with this. Okay, so maybe I cut this off here, cut this off here. Maybe we've got some buildings up here, whatever, okay? But the street scene has this nice gritty street right here at the bottom of the canvas. All right, what I can do now is I can turn any brush into an eraser by coming up to the mode again and turning on clear. And once I do that, I can start to carve away with that same brush like this, right? So now I'm going to carve out that little cityscape for myself like that. Maybe make that brush a little smaller, carve out some windows or something cool, right? I mean, this is obviously me. I'm not taking enough time here, but that's fine. You get the idea, right, folks? Just go ahead and fill some of those in. Go back, clear that out. Do a couple more of these. Nice. But look how easy that is. You take the brush, you use it in a positive and a negative kind of way, right? Additive and subtractive. Maybe that's a better way to put it. Additive and subtractive. So I come in here and just make myself a few refinements there. And as simple as that, you've got this nice textural background for a drawing, and you're using that texture to your advantage. A lot of people, they're like, well, how do you make a seamless tiling texture? The good news is, yes, there are ways to do it in Photoshop itself, but there are amazing plugins you can get. My favorite plugin is, let's see if I can pull it up here. Where did I have it? Okay. Oh dear, I might not have it in this version of Photoshop. I might have it on my other machine. Oh boy, let's see. Do I have it? Oh, I don't have it. Well, I gotta remember the name of this thing. It's amazing. It's a pattern generator, seamless tile. I think it's called Seamless Tile. I think it's as simple as that. And what it is a free plugin for Photoshop. But what you do is you make an image, and then you decide how you want it to tile, whether you want it to tile out to the corners to create a repeating grid, or you want to tile it out just side by side. And it's an incredibly cool, very easy, very fast plugin. If you just search for Seamless Tile plugin for Photoshop, it's probably going to be the first result you find. I think the company that makes it is something like Orange Box or something along that line. And I use it all the time. I'll scan a piece of paper like watercolor paper, and then I'll go ahead and I'll make a large tile of it, 1600 pixels, something like that. And I'll do that 1600 pixels square, and then I'll generate a pattern from that, and it's fantastic. Alrighty, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Let me check and see if we have any questions before I move on to special effects. Looks like a Jeffrey Allen Love page. Oh, I love Jeffrey Allen Love's work. Check out his books too. He's got great books. Will the same tilt effects work on the Pro Pen too, or do we need the Art Pen? You do not need the Art Pen. The Art Pen is for barrel rotation, which is not the same as tilt, but you can simulate barrel rotation simply by rotating your wrist, okay? See what I'm doing here? Let me just turn on this other view so you can see. If I rotate my wrist this way or that way, I will get the same kind of effect. Very similar anyway to barrel rotation, okay, folks? Let's see. The Keith Haring brushes, how do you download it? No, it's a library, Steve. So you have to install it via CC Libraries, which means you have to have a Creative Cloud account to use libraries, and then you grab the brushes there. Let's see here. All right, cool. So what's the difference between clear mode and using the eraser? Because the eraser will not retain all of the qualities of the brush that the brush will. Erasers are limited with some of the brush settings, and so the best thing to do is use clear mode if you want to have exactly the same kind of brush, only you're doing it in a negative or a subtractive way, pardon me. If that makes sense. Okay. All right, so we've talked about line smoothing, dissolve mode, fantastic. I want to talk about special effects really quickly here. So there are a lot of special effects you can create and custom brushes you can use to create textures and things like that. Now I do have a completely separate spatter pack, but inside the ink box here and also in Fresco, you'll find some spatters. So let's see here, I got a spatter bot, I believe it's called. Yes, here we go, spatter punk and spatter one. Close this document, go back to my original canvas, here we go. All right, so yes, spatter, how does it work? Well, you might have figured this out, but if you look at the brush stamp that I've got here, you can see it as I move around the canvas, and I'll just make that a little bigger. All right, that stamp is being rotated randomly, so we have an angle jitter of 100%. It's rotating all over the place. A size jitter of 100%, so it could be anywhere from 1% of its original diameter to 100% and everything in between. We have a roundness jitter, so that means that the roundness of that stamp is being squished, okay, randomly as well. Now all of that in combination with scattering, which you see I've got turned up pretty high here, right, is allowing me then to get these cool spatter effects. Really nice. So if you're doing something awful like having blood spatter around, well, here you go. You can do that. And this will save you a lot of time as well. And you can make your own spatter brushes that way. It's a simple process. And if you're looking for more of those, you can check out the spatter set. That's also included. I don't have it loaded right now, but it's got just a ton of spatter brushes. Another fun thing you can do, and this isn't so much with inking, but I just want to show it to you really quickly, If I go to the brushes that I put out in spring of 2020, I believe, it might have been spring of 2019. Let's just check here. Okay, 1 second. Spring, I have to keep track of all these brushes, gang. It's quite a few brushes. I have this Jackson Pollock brush, okay? Nice spatter brush there. But check this out. With the color dynamics turned on for spatter in the Pollock CD, which stands for color dynamics, look what happens. You get a random assortment of reds and yellows and oranges all happening at the same time. So be aware of what color dynamics do for you, all the many things. Look up on YouTube, color dynamics, search for my name with color dynamics. You'll find some videos about how color dynamics work. It's a really powerful thing you can use in your art. For inking, probably not relevant, so I don't want to get too much time in there spent on that, but pretty fantastic feature as well. But that standard Pollock brush is great, and that's in that free 2019 update from the spring, also available on that downloads page. All right, so going back to special effects, sometimes you want to paint something like brick or windows, and it's really time consuming, right? You're trying to draw all that stuff in there. You might get a pattern and just kind of slap it on, but the best thing you can do for yourself is create your own custom brushes to speed that up. I'll do a very quick demonstration, for example, of windows. So let's say I want to throw some windows on the side of a building, okay? So I'll make myself a new document. It's gonna be pretty small. All right, so just about, let's say 400 pixels square. That should cut it. And I'm going to make a new layer, and then with my rectangular marquee tool right over here, okay, I'm just gonna make a shape like a window, fill it with black. All right, I've got some space on the right, some space on the left. It's asymmetrical, that's totally fine. And then I can make another shape like right here, for example. Maybe I want to do this. And that can be this combination of shapes I want to use for windows on the side of a building. So what I do then is I say edit, define pattern, okay? We'll just call this window 1. Alrighty. Now, let's go back to our other document here. And let's imagine that I've drawn a building here. So I'll just go ahead and use my line tool for this. I've got a building, and this is the side of the building, and here's another side of the building off the top. And I'll just fill that. Maybe that's in shadow. And this facade of the building, I want to throw some windows on there. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just grab this basic round brush we made earlier, okay, nothing too fancy there. And I'll decrease the spacing. I'm going to come over here to texture, okay, and I'm going to select that window that we just made. See that pattern right there? It's right there. Okay, I grabbed it from here. And I'm going to change the mode here to height. Oops, sorry, subtract. Where is it? There we go, subtract. And I'm going to push that all the way up to 100%. And look at this, I can scale my windows. See this? Scaling the windows. Pump the contrast up. Make sure that's nice and dark. There we go. That brightness up. All right, when I find the scale that I like, I'm looking at this and I'm comparing it to my image right here. I can just test it out and say, oh yeah, cool, that's what I want. And then what I do is I just take an entire area, whatever, I just paint those windows. See this? Paint them like so. Actually, I do it on a new layer. That's the best thing to do. And I can even just paint them inside a nice big rectangle. See that? I made a selection. I do this. And I've got them on a separate layer. So when I hit Command T, which is free transform, I can just drag them over here. And I can hold down my Command key on a Mac, would be a Control key on a PC. So I can drag the corners to fit the perspective I need here, like this. And now I've got a bunch of windows on a building. Simple as that. Of course, you can be creative here, and you can then use your lasso tool to cut out some areas if you want to put some different features in the building. I want to put some doors there or something, whatever. Right? You can do that. And make another shape. And just come up this way, come down there. Say, okay, there's the doorway. But, so if you've got a lot of backgrounds, you've got to build a cityscape for a comic or something like that, and you need to throw some windows in, you just make a series of these brushes for yourself, different rectangular shapes, you save them as a pattern, you go and make that pattern mode, subtract, and you play around with the contrast and the brightness there, and then you have all of a sudden an instant window brush. And so you paint it flat and then transform it the way you need to fit that facade or whatever. You can do the same thing with brick pattern. You can do the same thing with practically anything, right? And that brings me to, what about more natural stuff like, you know, leaves and things like that? Well, yeah, you can make yourself custom brushes and combine them with patterns. And let's take a look at an example of how that could work. So I've got these Oz brushes, which were released last year to raise money for the Australian Red Cross. Let's see, where did I put those? Here we go. And there was just a whole bunch of foliage brushes. And you can see how these work, right? So how is this working? So what I did is, you can see the stamp as I float it around there. And I'm just doing the same thing as before. You create a good, dynamic, you know, interesting looking stamp. And then you fiddle around with those settings for size dynamics, right? Scatter. And in this instance, I'm also using a really simple texture, and that's what's breaking up that line from time to time. But, you know, if you're doing a jungle scene or any kind of scene with leaves, you create the kind of leaves that you want, just a few of them, and then quickly throw them in there, right? And then for variation, if you need to, go ahead and use that clear mode and remove a few of them. See this? Just like that. Simple. Keep it simple, right? Because that's not where the action is. That's something, if you just want to throw in some stuff in the background to make your illustration work, you can do this in a way that isn't repetitive or boring. You know, to look at those shapes right there in combination with a few others, let's say I just use these, right, here and there. All you need is like 2 or 3 brushes to create enough variation that the viewer is going to be very well satisfied with what's going on. And then I love to do this, come in, get some clear, come over the top. That way you get some contrast in the front, pop some stuff forward. Right, so there's a little pile of leafy action off to the corner in some drawing that I'm working on, right? Throw some more stuff here for ground cover, like that. And Bob's your uncle. What does that expression mean? People always say that, and I say, what, is Bob's your uncle? I don't have an Uncle Bob. Okay, but you see what I mean? Look at this. Easy peasy. Go back to clear again, cut out some of that. And you are in good shape, right? In 3 minutes or so, you can give yourself a little background there. Want to square that off? Go ahead and delete it. Throw a little something else down there. We'll zoom in so you can see all that texture there. Okay, look at all that variation in texture. That's just custom brush. You build it with a leaf shape. Let's dissect this one, for example. Okay, here's what it looks like to draw with it. There you go. Come over here. And let's look at this. We got shape dynamics. The angle jitter is very minor. Roundness jitter is pretty big. Size jitter, good amount, 40%. Pen pressure controlling how wide it gets, right? And the spacing is, of course, key. 40%, that gives it room to breathe from one branch to another, okay? Alrighty, so I'm gonna try and pop things over here to Fresco if I can. I think I can make this work. It's been a while since I did this, but let's give it a shot. Let's see if I can do this. Here we go. All right. We are going to try this. Bear with me for a moment here. Da, 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 da. All right, let's see if this works. Let's see if this works. Okie dokie. There. So you'll forgive me, I'm in trial mode here for this app called Reflector. But hopefully you can see what's on my screen here as I get my Apple Pencil out. And here is something I wanted to show you. In fact, how convenient, I'm getting a demo of it right now as I turn on the screen. Can you believe this? Yes, so in Fresco you have vector brushes, right? And vector brushes allow you to draw some nice, clean, crisp, smooth lines. And I'm just going to do a little something here. By the way, you also have your line smoothing. See this? I've got mine set to 50 right now. But yeah, let's just say that I'm drawing somebody. And then come over here and I say, all right, down we go, cross over, pick that up, cross over, right? It's starting to get a little sloppy. And I say, well, hey, hang on a second. I don't want those lines there to cross each other, right? But I do want to draw fast because I'm in a hurry and I've got to get this done. There's a deadline. All right, so I do all this work and I get the basic kind of look done and say, good, all right, well, I'm in good shape now. But look, let's say that line crosses over there and there and there. And I say, ay, ay, ay. All right, I just didn't have time to be that precise. What do you do? Well, remember, these are infinitely scalable, by the way. How nice is that? Vector line art. See this little friendly circle right here? This is my touch modifier. If I double tap on that, okay, whoops, hang on a minute. Triple tap on it, pardon me. I now have a special mode that allows me to swipe. Now, if you look down here where the neck and collar are, the far bottom left, I can swipe to remove any area that crosses over another. See what I'm doing here? I'm just wiping those lines away like they didn't exist. Goodbye. Amazing. And then I cleaned everything up in 2 seconds, right? Isn't that something, right? So let's say I got this little kitty cat here. I'll draw a little cat. Bring my brush back to normal here. Draw my little cat here. He's got a little tail. Okay. Meow. And yeah, he's like begging for food. And I go, okay, so kitty cat's got some stripes, right? Well, watch this. 1, 2, 3. I'm with one stroke just gonna go whoops, goodbye. Get rid of those. See that? That is called vector trimming. And it is so cool because you can just be as sloppy as you want, right? Maybe you're doing some lettering. Let's do something like this. You say, hey. Right? Sloppy, sloppy, sloppy. Let's vector trim that away, and that away, and that away, and just say goodbye. Clean it all up. Fantastic. Goodbye. Goodbye. Doop, doop. See this? This is called vector trimming, and it does what it says it does. It trims those extra lines you don't want, right? Grab your paint bucket tool and fill in the rest. I missed that one little guy, whoops. Just fill that in. And there you go. I'm not gonna say Bob's your uncle again, because like I said, I don't know what it means, but it is kind of a fun expression. Vector trimming, okay, great. The other thing I wanted to show you in Fresco, besides this lovely vector stuff, is a couple of things. One, we did not touch on while we were in Photoshop, but you can do this in Photoshop too, is to use special effects for cross-hatching, right? Because cross-hatching could be very time-consuming. So let's check this out here. I come over here to my brushes, and I'm going to now go to Effects, all right? And, oh, pardon me, comics. And look at this, crosshatch. Ta-da! Look at this, I can just crosshatch. How do you think that's working? Well, now that you've had a little peek behind the curtain at how these brushes work, you understand that we're using rotation, right? So angle rotation. We're using a little bit of the scattering, okay, just a touch, right? Little size jitter in there, as well as a little opacity jitter, and there's a little texture coming through. But man, how nice is it to be able to build up a little cross-hatching? Look at this, so simple. Make a nice gradation from black all the way to this nice faint look over here, right, and everything in between. So that's something that can be really handy for your inking, especially if you do it inside of a selection. So maybe you've got some shape and you need to do some cross-hatching inside. Just make a selection, cross-hatch that, good to go. Okay, huge time saver. The other thing I wanted to show you, clear that away, is ink and wash. So one of the things we have in Fresco that's so impressive is the watercolors. Now people think about using the watercolors as watercolors and painting with color and so on, but what about if you want to do ink and wash? Well, fantastic news, you can do that so realistically with these. So let's say I do a little drawing here, grab the, where's my felt tip pen? Here we go. Fountain pen is what I'm looking for. All right, so I'm just gonna draw this little kid here. And just give a little hair. And he's got this cool coat on. He thinks he looks really neat. He's really proud of himself with this coat that he got from his dad's closet. Which is way too big for him, okay? But he likes to try and wear dad's clothes. All right, now I want to do some cool ink and wash kind of effect here. So what I'll do is I'll make a layer underneath it, grab a watercolor brush. See this? Flat wash. And I'm going to use very little water. I'm going to pull it down to about like maybe 15%, okay? Make it a pretty big brush. And I'm going to reduce the flow of the paint so it's not too heavy, maybe about 75. And look at this, as I start to just pull this in here, use a little bit more water. Here we go. Choo, choo, choo. Hang on, so I'm gonna start with more water now that I think of it. Let's use a little more water. More water. There we go. Alrighty, and I'm gonna reset this brush and reduce that flow. This should be pretty nice. Even bigger. Oh, that's what I'm looking for. See that? Get that color to just kind of blend in there. Fantastic. So I want that coat to be kind of dark. And I want to do the same thing up here with the hair. Use a little less flow. So I'm going to get a nice gray tone. See that? Excellent. And now, check this out. I'm going to merge these layers. So I'm going to merge this layer down. All right. And what I can do now is now I can reduce the amount of water. So I'm just using a little bit of water, okay? And I'm not going to use any paints at all, just pure water, pure water. And if I touch these lines, look what happens. See that? Look at that. The ink starts to go into that wet paint. Right, so you can start to blend all that stuff together. Bring the water down even more. Do it like a value of 4 or 3, right? Lower flow. Look at this. So I can retain. Make that smaller. There we go. Increase my spacing a little bit. You can do all the same controls that you can do with your Photoshop brushes. I'm taking these lines here and just giving them a little bit Fantastic. Grab your pen and now draw on top. If it gets too dark, go ahead and erase. Yes, you can erase watercolor in Fresco, okay? In fact, one thing I like to do is erase with a brush. I'll show you something cool here. Go to Effects, and we're going to grab this nice ink spread brush. Here we go. Ink stains and ink spread. These are really fun. Hold down my touch modifier, and look at this. I can just lighten that up with these nice effects here. Little ink and wash action for you there. So there's just so much you can do with this watercolor, and you can even use watercolor as spatter, right? So just do a little bit of that, right? Amazing. It's still wet. You want to dry it, you just dry your layer. And when you dry it, come back in. You can play around with just adding water. See those cool drops that you get everywhere? Look at that. It's like alcohol. If you use alcohol with watercolor, same kind of effect. Super neat. Well, there you go, gang. Hey, what can I tell you? There's always so much to talk about, and unfortunately, I don't have all day. We had an hour together, so I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll be back, for another masterclass in 2 Fridays from now. Have a great Lightbox. Thanks for hanging out with me, and hit me up on Twitter at Kyle T. Webster if you have any questions. Everybody, take care, stay safe, and remember, please, to be kind. See you next time.